First things first, a little housekeeping. I know there's no Mission Impossible Ghost Nation or Rogue Nation review up right now, and that's because I haven't seen it yet. So hopefully I'll see it sometime this week, and then that'll be up pretty soon. As well as, hopefully I want to try to get in a viewing of The Gift, to the Jason Bateman, Joel Edgerton thriller that's come out. But it's only in a few select cinemas, so I'll see if I can find a screening nearby and do it, because I've been hearing those are getting great reviews and sound like fun movies. Because I need a fun movie. Because I went to see Fant4stic 4 today. I'm going to say, like, writing the review for Neverending Radical Dude for this is going to be a breeze. Because I find writing reviews for shit movies comes very easily to me than it does trying to get all the praise in for a movie. And that's the thing. I didn't want to go into this skeptical. I went into it as even-keeled as I could, because I honestly was, for the longest time, a devil's advocate for this movie. At first, when I heard it's like, oh, they're rebooting Fant4stic 4 again. Okay, just give it back to Marvel. What the hell? But then I understood why they're not giving it back to Marvel, because Fox just wants to make as much money as they can off of their Marvel properties. Milk those cows while you got them. I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. But then when I heard who was directing it and who was getting story input was Josh Trank from Chronicle, which I liked, I was like, okay, there's a possibility here for something interesting and different, maybe. And then when I heard about the casts, I was still on board, honestly. I'm like, okay, well, they're skewing younger. That makes sense. They're probably taking cues from Ultimate Fant4stic 4, the comic book series, where they are younger, which is fine. Even with the casting of Michael B. Jordan as Johnny Storm, I'm like, who gives a shit what the character's race is? As long as the dude can service the character fine, then that shouldn't even be an issue. So I was for that. I was like, I wasn't naysaying it just because I'm like, oh, they can't do that to an iconic character. I still think a Will Smith Superman would have been cool. Even with the trailers, I was kind of sold on this idea, because the trailers are talking about a movie that's completely different from the movie that I just saw. The trailers are conveying this sense of fun exploration while being a little bit more serious and darker than the previous interpretations of this franchise. But it looked like it was going to be focusing more on the exploration and sci-fi aspects of the Fant4stic 4 more than anything else. So to kickstart it, 2007, little 5th grade Reed Richards and Ben Grimm are in class together, and all the students are sharing about what careers they want to have in the future. And before Reed Richards goes up, there's some kid just saying, it's like, I would love to have Eli Manning's job. And that was pretty much his report. And the teacher's like, great report, son. All right, Reed, get up here. Reed Richards gets up and starts talking about the possibility of quantum physics and teleportation, and it's clear that he's thought it through. He's not just bullshitting off the top of his head. Like, he's got formulas in his notebook, and he's talking in very eloquent scientific terms. Teacher just shuts him down automatically. And it's just like, no, we're here to talk about real careers, Mr. Richards. Motherfucker. Oh, and the teacher is Dan Castellaneta, Homer Simpson. And then I'm just like, motherfucker. Science. Scientists, physicists, inventors. Those are real careers. I'm like, what the hell? And, okay, so that's 5 minutes into this movie, and I'm already kind of like, okay, we're going for that cliched. Everyone's going to look at this guy like a bug, essentially, because he's just weird and smart and eccentric. Woo. Even though he's not that eccentric. So he and Ben end up building, like, his first ever teleporter, or his first attempt at a teleporter. Fast forward about, I think it was 7 years, when they're 17 or 18, but they look like they're in their 30s. Like, they look like me if I were still in high school. And they've built this teleporter, like miniature size at least, and he demonstrates it for this science fair, which this teacher is still his teacher all the way through 7 years of school, apparently. And he teleports this model airplane. He puts it in there, the big glow of light, disappears, comes back, and it's a little burnt and worn out for wear and sandy, but at least it's clear that something happened to it. and they came back. These goddamn teachers, this is the worst school system ever, because these goddamn teachers just witnessed teleportation. They witnessed science in action, and their response is, this is a science fair, not a magic show. I was in the theater, and I couldn't contain myself. I ended up just saying pretty loud, too, "What?" As soon as I heard that line, I was like, "What?" And the girl next to me actually kind of laughed a little bit, because I think she understood where I was coming from on this, because, oh my God, you just witnessed teleportation happen. This is science. This is physics at work. And that's your response? Is to disqualify this kid and tell him, like, oh, we don't believe in your voodoo? What the fuck kind of school is this? So, regardless, immediately I'm just like, okay, this is just lame screenwriting to just be like, oh, this kid's weird. Oh, no, he'll never amount to anything with his crazy ideas. And just to easily segue him into being accepted at the Baxter Foundation, because Reggie Cappy from The Wire and Square One fame, slumming it here, and Kate Mara from House of Cards, again, slumming it here, show up and offer him a chance to work with him, because they've been working on teleportation, or, you know, interdimensional travel, and they want to bring him into the process. So he accepts, goes to the Baxter building, meets all of them. It's a bunch of faceless student people, and Sue Storm, and Franklin Storm, her dad, and then they bring in Johnny Storm, because he's a delinquent who needs straightening out. So what better place to straighten out a juvenile delinquent, illegal drag racer, than have him work for you on your science project. And then bring in the original, very obviously mentally unhinged founder of the project, Victor Von Doom, who, I'm sorry, I really kind of wish they just stuck with Domachev. Like, I heard that was supposed to be kind of his name, and then it turns into Doom later on or whatever. I would have been cool with that, because as serious as this movie's trying to take itself, as much as they're going for this grounded, like, down-to-earth, gritty look, as soon as you bring in the character with the last name Von Doom, all your legitimacy about that just goes out the window. Sorry. I'm like, come on, clearly he's going to be the bad guy. His last name is literally Doom. And I know that's kind of a comics thing too and everything like that, but come on, if you're going to change a lot with this vision, I would have rolled with your idea for Domachev. Whatever. But anyways, he comes back in, and he's like this big anti-authority, anti-society. We're shitty. We're a shitty species that's destroying our own world type worldview, essentially. And he's hung up on Sue because reasons, unexplored past. No one gets into it. She barely speaks to him. He barely speaks to her. He just looks at her creepily across the way. There's never any point where I'm like, oh, so there's some kind of connection they did have at some point, or maybe not, or you know, nothing's ever explored in terms of relationships in this movie. Reed and Sue's back and forth is just back and forth without any chemistry. Johnny's hot-headed at times, but then he's really passive for most part. Poor Ben Grimm. Jamie Bell gets given the thinnest stuff to work with this before he things out. I was about to say hulks out, but no. Before he turns into the Thing. There's nothing to him. All you know is that his older brother used to beat him up a lot and would say it's clobbering time. So now your favorite catchphrase from the ever-loving Thing is tied to sibling abuse. And that's about it. And that he's loyal to Reed for reasons. I don't really understand. There's never any point that I understand really why these two are friends. They just are. I never understand really why Ben's so passive about everything. Reed and Doom and Johnny are getting drunk because when they finally make the teleporter work with a fake CGI monkey, Tim Blake Nelson comes in, who kind of co-heads the Foundation with Storm and has connections to the government. Gum-chewing Tim Blake Nelson, because he's playing your stereotypical government official who's an opportunistic asshole. And the one character trait, I guess, he was like, I'm going to make this for myself. Every scene I'm in, I'm going to chew the fuck out of some gum. Literally, that's what he does. He's in a hazmat suit talking to somebody, and he's chewing gum. He's in meetings chewing gum. He's giving a presentation to military and government officials about the weapon application possibilities for the Fantastic Four's powers, and he's chewing gum. Throughout this entire movie, I was like, stop chewing gum. Every scene he's in. I know that's one little thing I shouldn't be getting hung up right about now, because there's a shit ton more that's wrong with this movie, but every time Tim Blake Nelson came on, I'm like, oh goddamn, is he gonna be chewing gum again this time? Yeah, he's chewing gum again. My God, do something. Do something else. But, okay, so he essentially says, sorry, I went off really fast on the gum chewing. He essentially says, like, okay, teleporter works, congratulations, guys. Now we're gonna talk to NASA and send in astronauts. And they get pissy about this, because they're like, well, we want to be the first explorers. And, you know, why send in people who train to deal with harsh environments as part of their living? So they get drunk, and they're like, fuck it, we're going to go in there first anyways, right now. And so Reed ends up calling up Ben. It was like, yo, I'm going in there, but I'm not going without you, because we've been working on this since we were little kids. I told the guys you were going to come. You know, you're my buddy, let's do this together. And his response to all of this is not like, you're crazy, or like, no, I'm not doing it, or he doesn't need any arm twisting. He's just like, yeah, okay. Literally, I'm putting even more emotion into it than he was, because he's just like okay with it. He just goes along. And so they go. Sue's not involved in the mission, in the fucking around with the space travel stuff, but she ends up being in close proximity to it later on when they come back and it explodes, and it's essentially like The Fly. Ben gets rocks in his pod or whatever when he transports back, so that's why he becomes the Thing. Johnny had some fire, caught on fire in his pod, so that's why he's Human Torch. I don't understand where Reed got his stretching powers from, and I understand even less why Sue Storm was affected by anything and why it turned into that power level, but I'm willing to let that go for the sake of just getting through this. So let's get to the actual part of the movie that had some emotional resonance for me. Is when Reed wakes up after the accident, and he wakes up and he finds that he's stretched out all over this table. He can hear Ben through a ventilation shaft screaming in pain as like he's coming out of a rock pile essentially that's making up his body, and he's like screaming like, Reed, help me, Reed! And Reed's like, my friends, what have you done with my friends? Like he's screaming and crying. Sue's in a coma. Johnny, who at first just looked like a burnt corpse on fire, wakes up slowly, and like he's screaming at the top of his lungs because he's on fucking fire. That was the only point in this movie that I had any kind of emotional response to. And that response was like, this is terrifying. This is horrific. So that was effective. And I heard like Trank was somewhat inspired by Cronenberg. I totally see that in this, and in other places too. But when the one emotion you're getting out of a Fantastic Four movie is horror, something's wrong. And here's the whole deal. You can have different interpretations of characters. You can tell the story any way you want. You can, everything like that. But I feel with certain characters in this modern mythology that comics represent, there are certain tendencies you kind of had to stick to for each. Superman, even in Man of Steel, which is an overly dark, violent movie, even in Man of Steel, there are glimmers of the iconography and hopefulness that character is supposed to embody. In Batman, throughout most interpretations, there is kind of this sense of dark, foreboding nature that he represents. In a Fantastic Four movie, a couple of things you kind of want to keep intact is the idea of a family unit, of this being able to rely on your comrades, and also this sense of fun, a little bit of fun. It doesn't have to be silly, but the Fantastic Four, since its inception, has always been kind of about the bright side of exploring, the bright side of traveling into the unknown, as it were. This is such a dark, bleak affair that the most effective thing is when your lead characters are in agony and are completely traumatized by what they're going through. When that's your most effective emotional scene, something went wrong along the ways. And I've heard that Trank isn't happy about the direction this movie took, and that there were, I think towards the end of the movie, there's several, you can kind of tell that maybe there was a lot of studio interference. But also the idea that, like, I don't care. I was so bored throughout this movie, actually, that by the time Doom shows up and starts blowing people's heads up, a la Scanners. I mean, Dr. Doom, I'm not calling him Dr. Doom. Doom, because he's not a doctor in this. He's a kid who is there. Doom is essentially Akira, or not Akira, what's his name, Tetsuo from Akira, because his powers are he can do whatever. Whatever the plot needs, he can do it. Build giant rock structures in his home dimension, create a portal out of nowhere, sure, blow up people's heads a lot. Why not? I'm not kidding. Like, he blows up at least 15, 20 people's heads in this movie. And it is straight out of Akira. Like, it's just as gruesome. This is a PG-13 movie, but those scenes are gruesome. He blows up Tim Blake Nelson's head inside his hazmat suit. He fricassees Franklin Storm, spoilers, but then you don't care when Johnny Storm and Sue Storm are crying over his dead body because they've had a total of, like, probably 2 conversations with him throughout the entire movie up until that point, and it's been mostly exposition shit. So I don't feel the family connection. It ain't because Sue Storm's adopted. I just don't feel the family connection there because they've had 0 to little time to establish any kind of chemistry with each other. Like I said, the Reed Sue stuff is just kind of put there to be like, okay, it's the obligatory boy and girl have flirtation. Doom is infatuated for some reason with Susan, but then doesn't matter in the end because whatever, he wants to destroy the world because fuck the world. Nothing worked enough to engage me with this movie. And it felt really like a big letdown, honestly. Because based off the trailers of this, I was hoping that at least there would be an interesting take. And apparently there might be, because there's still a sequel planned for this thing. And honestly, this movie just feels like it's building up for a sequel. It's not so much about the idea of world building as it is like this feels like a trailer for another movie. It really does. I've heard people say it before. I firmly believe that when I was watching it. Because at no point does it ever feel like there's a purely Fantastic Four type moment in this movie. Even at the end when they're united against Doom, that doesn't feel like a Fantastic Four moment. And it does it's lifted its cues from other movies pretty well, at least. Like, it did the whole, like, he's gonna say Avengers Assemble, but we're not gonna show him saying Avengers Assemble. In other words, they don't come up with a name until the very end, and Ben Grimm is basically saying, like, all of this, it's fantastic. And Reed's like, say that again. And he's like, what? It's fantastic. And Reed's like, oh, I think I know a name for us. Guys, what do you think of this? We'll call ourselves... Directed by Josh Trank. Strike 4, Fantastic Four. You've had your shot, 20th Century Fox. Just give the rights back to Marvel, please. You guys can keep X-Men. Because X-Men are doing fine. I feel that Marvel's the only one who will be able to handle this franchise properly at this point. I'm not so worried about the X-Men, because I mentioned this before. The X-Men have always seemed like a community unto themselves anyways. So you can tell their stories outside of regular Marvel continuity whatever you're trying to establish in the shared universe, and I wouldn't be bothered. Would I love to see Wolverine fight the Hulk? Sure, but you know what? It's not as demanding. But Fantastic Four, it needs to be in that world that Marvel Studios is kind of establishing, where the scientific and the goofy and the dark and the galactic and cosmic all just feel like they do belong in the same universe. It's like, I think, what was it? Someone was saying on a review, it's like, this is the same universe that has a talking raccoon and then has a dark kingpin who murders people by decapitating them with a car door. There's room for everybody in this universe, and it never does anything really feel out of place. So the Fantastic Four would feel right at home in that universe they're establishing. With this one, where there isn't really even a universe, there's world stakes, like the world's going to end if Doom gets his way, essentially, but you never feel that global stake at any point, because all this movie takes place in dark corridors, in laboratories, and then in the other world, in Planet Zero, which is the negative zone. Just call it the negative zone. That sounds cooler. There's never a sense of like, okay, yeah, they're fighting for the world. That there's something at risk in this movie. You never get that sense. And maybe it's because of the fact that you've seen this so many times already. And I'm not saying just the franchise itself, but this setup. The four of them, and then Doctor Doom. Roger Corman, Fantastic Four, you had the four of them, and Doctor Doom. And the jeweler slash whoever, mole man, whoever he's supposed to be. Tim Story, which, frankly, I enjoy the Tim Story movies more than this one, because at least they were bad. Don't get me wrong, they're bad, but there's some kind of entertainment going on there. I like Chickless better as the Thing than what they did with him here. And that's the whole deal. It's like, I don't think Jamie Bell's a bad actor. He's barely on screen as Jamie Bell. I feel he could be fine in the role if he had just a better plot, a better characterization going for him. He would be fine. I have no problem with this young Fantastic Four take, because all the actors are good actors. I like these people in other work, and I feel they could have brought some kind of sense of charisma and charm to these roles if the roles were written to incorporate charisma and charm. But yeah, I would take Michael Chiklis' Thing over this Thing any day of the week. Michael Chiklis' Thing at least was a character. He had a rounded arc. Chris Evans as Johnny Storm. Sure, he's a douchebag in those movies, but you know what? Johnny Storm is supposed to be a douchebag, and he was at least like a charismatic enough actor that the douchebaggery didn't seem too malicious or whatever. I feel Miles Jordan could kind of encapsulate that, a very similar take, if he had anything else to do. Regardless, I mean, that's just my thing, is that clearly these characters need to go back to Marvel. Because Marvel will figure out something to do with them that would be right. There's glimmers of interesting ideas in this movie. I would have been all on board for this interesting direction Trank was kind of going with it. You have to make it more engaging than what it was. Make the characters actual characters. Leave out hokey, hackneyed shit like that science fair stuff. I don't know. Put a sense of the idea that despite, alterations to designs or alterations to story, that this is the Fantastic Four in some level. It doesn't feel like it at all. Like I said, even when I'm supposed to be getting a sense like, oh, they're the team now, I still don't feel that. And I was really wanting to give this the benefit of the doubt. I didn't want to go in with a bad attitude towards this movie. It's like, I don't want to go into movies just full on expecting to hate. Even Pixels. I was like, okay, maybe it can turn around. I was going at least with curiosity of being like, maybe this will surprise me. So, my recommendation, watch. If you can find the Roger Corman Fantastic Four, watch that. Watch Tim Story's Fantastic Four movies for different reasons entirely. To have a laugh because of how inept they are, but at least they're entertainingly inept. This, I can't even make fun of it too much. Aside from that science fair shit, it's just boring. It was boring, uninteresting. The characters aren't characters, and at the very end, it just rushes to, because it's like, oh shit, yeah, right, we're a superhero film. We gotta have some kind of superhero shit going on, I guess. Whatever. Let's make some money off this. And that, I mean, that's the other part of it too, is that that was the one thing I couldn't get out of my head, was that I went into this fully aware that, like, the only reason this is being made is because Fox wants to keep a death grip on the rights to the characters it owns, or that it has, like the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. However, the X-Men can afford that because they, for the most part, have had a good track record with their movies. When you've had a franchise like Fantastic Four that has done less than favorably with regards to critical response and box office, maybe that's a sign that you can probably afford to give that up. I'm just saying. At least with X-Men, there have been really standout, awesome movies in that franchise. Fantastic Four has yet to hit anything resembling an X2 or a First Class or a Days of Future Past. So, that being said, I'm looking forward to Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. The Deadpool trailer played before this, which was interesting because it was a green band trailer, and after seeing the red band trailer, and you know which parts they've either edited or altered the dialogue a little bit to make it age appropriate, it's kind of funny to see a clean version of that trailer now. I'm looking forward to Deadpool. That at least looks like it's embracing more of the characterization of that, because Deadpool is just wacky. It's not like they're bringing Deadpool as like this hardened vigilante character. There'll be gore, sure. There'll be action and dirty jokes around, but it'll at least be like, it at least seems like Ryan Reynolds has the right idea with that characterization. That character's supposed to be fun. Keep him fun. The Fantastic Four, whatever iteration they're in, there has to be a sense of togetherness with that group. There has to be a sense of family and enjoyment and a little bit of optimism when it comes to the idea of adventures and exploration. It's clobbering time, which means somewhere out there, an older brother's beating up his younger brother.